Welcome to Floor One. How's everybody doing tonight? Watching the movie at home.
Don't be afraid, won't let you fall, girl. Don't be afraid, won't let you fall, girl.
Martin Luther King, I would have to say that probably over the last 100 years, he's got to be the most influential, most important man in American history in the last 100 years. He has to be. Because he had a dream. He had a dream that people should be treated equally. And he fought for that dream. And he did it in a way that was completely different than anybody had ever done it before that point, and anybody honestly has ever done it since. He did it in such a way that they actually gave him the Nobel Peace Prize. I was in D.C. 10 years ago, and I love history, and I get real geeked out if I'm standing somewhere where something significant had happened in history. And I was standing in front of the Lincoln Memorial, and I was looking out over the National Mall, and I was with a friend, and I looked at him and I said, "Can you believe it that, like, here on these steps, Martin Luther King spoke to thousands of people about his dream?" And it was so crazy because the moment I said that, we looked down and we were literally standing on the spot. There was a plaque that's ingrained into the concrete on this spot, on this date. Martin Luther King gave this speech. You see, he wasn't okay with the way things were. And he was willing to do something about it. And so the year that he died, 1968, he went to this high school, and that's the clip that you saw. And he spoke to a bunch of teenagers just like you. And he believed so much in that he spoke this truth into them. And so here we are, we're wrapping up this 3-week series called Not Okay, and we've been spending a lot of time just talking about what does it mean to not be okay? And like we have pressed deep into the things that you've been struggling with, not just this last year, but maybe for some of you, things you've been struggling with for a very long time. And we said the thing that we need to say out loud, that it's okay to not be okay. Like, you got to say those things out loud. You got to say it out loud so it stops owning you, because what you can't say out loud owns you. And then we talked about how you got to be honest with yourself, and you got to be honest with the people in your life, and you got to let people in. And that doesn't mean that everybody that you let in is going to have the answers, because most of the time they're not, but you can't do it alone. You got to be willing to let people fight with you and fight for you. And so here we have Martin Luther King, who was just this man who did these incredible things through nonviolence. He led a movement that literally changed the world. That in the 1960s, here we were 100 years after the Civil War, and we were still fighting the same fight that they were fighting, and through nonviolence and based off of his Christian beliefs and based off of his value in himself, he fought for equality. And I just think, man, I wonder how much more would he have done if it wouldn't have been for April of that year that a man decided to take his life. Martin Luther King was not okay with the way things were. And he wanted to move forward. And he wanted to help a generation of people to move forward. Because listen, it's okay to not be okay. It's absolutely okay to not be okay. Because I'm not just talking about these last 11 months and this pandemic that we've all been through. I'm talking about life. There's always going to be something in your life that's going to hit you in the face and that's going to completely change the trajectory of your life. And in those moments, it's okay to not be okay about that stuff. That's what we've been doing these last 3 weeks, saying out loud. It is okay to not be okay. But today we have to talk about the bigger truth. You just can't stay there. It is okay to not be okay, but you can't stay there. We got to move. We got to go forward. And I love when Martin Luther King looks at that crowd of students and he says, if you can't fly, then run. And if you can't run, then walk. And if you can't run, then crawl. Whatever you got to do, you just got to keep moving forward. And so that's what we're going to talk about in our little bit of time together today. And then we're going to send you guys to your groups and hopefully give you one more week to just talk deep. And I appreciate you guys who have been doing that, who've been owning the moment and saying those things out loud and letting people into your life. And for those of you that haven't been able to do that, that's okay too. It's just our hope that over these last couple of weeks that there has been a truth that you've been able to hold on to that's been giving you comfort and giving you support. But today we got to talk about the really hard thing. How do we move past not being okay? How do we move forward? And so we've also been spending time in Matthew 26. So Matthew 26 is Jesus, and he's in the garden, and it's Thursday night. In 12 hours from that moment, he's going to go through the most brutal, horrific 12 hours of his life. They're going to take him, and they are going to beat him, and they are going to literally rip the flesh off of his body. He is going to go through a level of human pain that is unknown by anybody. And then on the spiritual side, he is not just going to take our sin. Scripture says he will become our sin. He will become the worst of us. And in that moment, he will feel this pain and this hurt to the point to where he'll cry out to his Father, "Why have you forsaken me?" And then he'll die. And so here he is in the garden. And he's going through the process that we need to go through. Because if it's okay for Jesus, it's okay for us. And the first thing that he does is he says out loud that he's not okay. He says, my soul is overwhelmed to the point of death. And he says, if there is any other way for what is happening right now to happen any other way, is there any way around this? Is there any way for me to save the world but not go through this? Let it be. And he just says out loud what we all say, because here's the truth. You are going to face things in your life that you're not going to want to go through. And it's not just going to be one thing, but it's going to be several things. And most of the time, it's not going to be your fault at all. Like somebody somewhere is going to decide to do something that's going to affect your life in a negative way. And that is not on you and that is not your fault, but you're still going to have to deal with it. And then you're going to face things where nobody did anything to you. It's just life happening to you. And regardless of how unfair it is, you're still going to have to go through it. And then, unfortunately, you are going to make decisions in your life that are not going to be wise and good decisions. And because of that, you're going to have to deal with the consequences of those things. And you're going to have to face what's in front of you. That it's okay to not be okay about any of those things. But we can't stay there. So Jesus, he says, if there's any other way for this to happen, let it happen. But it doesn't happen. And then he goes back to his guys. And he takes his guys to the garden. Like it's a different night. Like normally when Jesus goes and he prays, he does it by himself. But on this night, he asks them to come with him. He never asks them to come with him. He's like, could you guys sit here and just be with me? I don't need answers. I just need you here. And when he comes back, they're sleeping. And he wakes them up and he's like, could you guys not just be awake with me for 1 hour? I don't need answers. I just need you to be here with me. I need you to share this with me. And then he goes back and he prays the prayer again. But this time it's a little different. And this time when he talks to his father, he says, if there is no other way for this to happen than me to go through it, then I'll go through it because that's what I got to do. If this is my cup and I got to drink it, then I'll drink it. He goes back and it says that the guys were sleeping again. And then he goes a third time and he prays the same prayer that he prayed the second time, accepting what had happened. And then when he comes back, he wakes up his guys and he could see that there's soldiers coming with torches. And Judas, one of his own, is in that group. He's about to kiss Jesus on the cheek, selling Jesus out. And he tells the guys, it's time to get up, because the Son of Man is about to be handed into the hands of others. And then he says, and I believe it's verse 46, he says, get up. We have to go. That when we talk about going through things in your life that you don't want to go through, when we talk about going through things that are not fair, going through things that you don't want to face, there's nobody that understands your pain better than Jesus. I mean, he gets it. He knows what it's like to not be okay. But he also knows what it's like that when the cup is set in front of you, sometimes you got to drink that cup. Because sometimes the only way we get through things is to get through things. Sometimes the only way that we go forward is to move forward. Sometimes the only way you are going to get through it is you're going to have to own this moment because it's your moment. Now it's like, I know that you're thinking, man, isn't there a better answer? Like, isn't there like an option B, a secret back door? Isn't there a workaround? Most of the time in life, there's not. And the reason why people become adults and have a hard time dealing with life is because in high school, they never learned how to deal with life. That the things that you are dealing with right now and how you learn to deal with them are going to shape the way you deal with things for the rest of your life. So what better time than right now than to figure out how to deal? And so when you talk about going through things that are not okay, man, Martin Luther King is the guy to talk to within the last 100 years. You talk about somebody who not only was nonviolent in the way that he handled his things, but he did it in a world that was constantly violent against him. Constantly, for his belief in the value of people, Martin Luther King was persecuted and he was beaten and he was thrown in jail, and many of the people that he called his closest friends were killed, and ultimately in the end he was murdered for his belief. So here he is in the same year that he's about to be assassinated. He's looking at a group of students and he's trying to tell them that, listen, you are going to go through some things in your life that are going to be hard, and there are going to be days where you can't run, and there are going to be days that you can't walk, but you got to crawl, you got to move, you got to keep going forward. Sometimes the only way through it is through it. Sometimes you got to drink the cup that's in front of you. And he says, so let me tell you a couple things to help you drink that cup. And that's what I want to do. I want to tell you some things to help you drink that cup. Because I'm telling you, 9 out of 10 times, the only way to do it is to drink the cup. First thing MLK said was, you got to have a deep belief in God. You got to believe that there's somebody bigger than you. You got to believe that there's somebody who's in control other than you. You got to believe that you're living life for more than just you, that there's somebody that's bigger that you're living life for. And it can't be your significant other. And as much as we love our parents, it can't be our parents. We got to live for the approval of a higher being, and that is God. Because listen, if life is just about me and you and what we want, or what the people that we love want, life is going to be a big disappointment. Because I don't need to tell you guys that, but people will let you down. And as much as people love you, they are also selfish. And as much as you are loving, you are also selfish. And if you were the one making all the decisions in your life, imagine what kind of mess that would constantly be. Matter of fact, that's why most people live in a mess. Because they've not given their life over to the authority of Jesus. They've not trusted someone bigger than them, someone that sees further and knows more. They just let life end on them or end on other people. And when people let you down, you go to somebody else. When you let you down, you find something else to figure it out. We will always let us down. I said it a couple weeks ago. I'm going to say it again. Nobody in your life has let you down, lied to you, or disappointed you more than you. And I'm telling you, the people that you trust, that you love, and I get that you're friends, they're good people. But they're just like you, struggling, trying to figure things out. We got to be living for somebody bigger than us. And Martin Luther King says, you got to have a deep belief in God. You got to sell out to somebody that's higher than you, who sees the bigger picture, who understands you like anybody else. Because the second thing that Martin Luther King says is you got to sell out to a deep calling. You got to believe that your life has calling, that you got purpose, that you have a significant thing that you are supposed to do on this earth. And you got to go all out and you got to chase it. Because I promise you this, when you try to live out your calling and you try to be the person that God calls you to be, you are going to face opposition. For some reason, an insecure world just wants to stay insecure. And that's the biggest problem with social media. For all the great things that social media has to connect us, the worst thing that it does is it tries to keep us all the same. Nobody wants to see anybody succeed and be confident. So what happens is you try to be confident in your calling. You try to be confident in the person that God's called you to be. Other people who are insecure sees that confidence and they try to shut you down. But something happens when you sell out to that calling. Something happens when you say, listen, I serve a God that is bigger than me, and he loves me, and he has called me to do something with my life, and I'm not going to let anybody get in the way of that and change that. And so when you face things that are hard and you face situations that are tough, sometimes the only way to get to who you're supposed to be is to get through the things that are in front of you. But then Martin Luther King says a third thing, and it's the most important thing. He says, you got to have a deep belief in God. You got to have a deep belief in your calling, but you got to sell out and have a deep belief in your value. You got to believe that you've got worth. Because if you don't believe that you're worth it, you won't be willing to risk anything for it. If you don't believe you're worth it, you won't be willing to risk anything for it. And the moment you come against opposition, the moment something punches you in the face, and the moment something says you can't or you're not good enough, you'll listen and you'll turn and you'll run. We said this a couple weeks ago. It doesn't matter how hard and how loud I scream in this microphone. It doesn't matter how many times I show up in your life and tell you that I love you and tell you that I care about you. It doesn't matter how much the people in your life believe in you. If you don't believe in yourself, it's not going to work. You got to believe in you. You got to believe that you're worth fighting for. You got to believe you're worth what God has done for you. And listen, I can make it real easy to tell you how valuable you are. The cross is the evidence of how valuable you and I are, because what Jesus is about to do in 12 hours is proof that you have value. Everything he's going to do, everything that I've talked about, everything we're about to celebrate here in a couple months happens because you have value, that Jesus gives his life to save me. He gives his life to save you. You are worth it. But man, you got to be the one to believe that. Because the moment you stop believing you're worth it is the moment you run away from the calling on your life, and the moment you stop giving God authority over your life. And listen, I'm going to tell you something right now. Somebody will tell you how to live your life. Somebody will. Listen, I know sometimes we get overconfident in ourselves and we think like we can live life our own self and make our own decisions and do our own things. I'm telling you, that's not true. You will submit to the authority of somebody in your life. So why not be the one that knows you better than anybody else? Why not be the one who gave his life to save you? Why not be the one who loves you and has a purpose for you and sees value in you? See, the moment you start believing that you have worth is the moment that you start selling out to your calling. It's the moment that you start trusting God with everything in your life. And then all of a sudden, it doesn't matter what you go through. You are going to go through some things in your life that are not okay. And it's okay to not be okay. But you know what happens when I have worth and when I have a calling and I have a relationship with God? I can sit in that moment and go, you know what? This isn't okay. This sucks. I don't like the way this feels. But you know what? It's not going to last forever. And I'm not going to be here forever. And I'm not always going to go through this. And I'm not always going to feel like this. And I'm not always going to be alone. And it's not always going to be bad. I will move forward because the God who made me gave his life for me. And he has a calling for my life. And I'm just going to go. And I tell you what, when you start living like that and believing like that, what's going to happen is you're going to get the haters out there that are going to be so insecure and so uncomfortable with what you're doing. But I promise you, if you keep pressing through and you keep living out that truth and you keep chasing after what God has for your life, other people who are just looking for somebody else to live that, to have hope, are going to start chasing after you. And they're going to say, I want that. I want to know what it feels like to be loved by a God like that. I want to know what it feels like to have my purpose and have my calling. I want to know what it feels like to have worth. And in that moment, you just got to be real and say, listen, it's going to be hard and it's going to be tough. Sometimes you got to drink the cup that's in front of you. Sometimes the only way through it is through it, but we will get through it. And there will be days that we can run through the things that we're going through. We can run through it like running through a brick wall. There's going to be days you're going to feel so strong. You're just going to be challenged in the different things that are coming your way. Like, whatever it is, bring it. I will run through it. And there's some days you're just going to be tired and it's going to be like, listen, I'm just going to walk. But I'm going to get there and I'm going to walk. And there will be days where you feel like crawling. But whatever it is, don't stop moving. Man, you are worth it. God gave too much for you to just give up because something bad happens to you. And I don't want to belittle the bad things that happen to you, because some of y'all, you've been through some things that are tough, like hard. So I'm not going to try to belittle that or talk down to that. I'm just trying to tell you this. I don't know what you're going through. I just know that the God that we both serve is bigger than what you're going through. He's bigger than it. And he's been through a lot. And he's overcome. And if he did it for me, then he can do it inside of me. And I just got to trust him. So I'm going to keep moving. And I'm going to keep going. And I'm not going to give up. Because 2 steps forward and 1 step back, that's still a step forward. As long as you don't stop moving, you're winning. So, it's okay to not be okay. 100% okay. You can be upset. You can be angry. You can be frustrated. But you know what you can't do? You can't stay there. You can't stay there. You got to move. And you're not alone. There's a God who has gone through all the things that you've gone through. And he's overcome this world. And he will do this with you. And that's why we're a part of this thing called Floor One. We're part of this body, this community of people. I promise you, there are a bunch of people in this room that if you called any one of us, we'd be there for you. And if you think I'm lying, I challenge you to make me prove it to you. We'll be there. We'll get through this together. It will be hard. But we will get through this. But it starts with you. You got to believe you're worth it. And you got to stop making excuses. And you got to stop listening to people that you know you don't need to be listening to. And maybe this week for some of you, that means shutting out some of the world. And getting around some people that believe the way that you believe. Getting around some people that love you the way that God loves you. Man, just spending some time reading some scriptures. And open up the YouVersion Bible app. It doesn't get any easier than that. And picking out a devotion and picking out the verse of the day and just reading it and just meditating on that. Maybe it just means going on a walk and just talking to God and praying. Opening up a journal and just writing your thoughts down. Maybe some of y'all just need to take a nap this week. And just rest in the fact that God loves you and he has you. And then I promise you, I want to go back to the words they sang on that song, My Testimony. If you're not dead, God's not done. If you are not dead, God is not done. Man, God is not done with you. He's just getting started. If you just let him. Just let him in.
If I'm not dead, then you're not done. Greatest things are still to come.
Well, that's going to do it for today's video. Thank you guys so much for watching, and while you're here, leave a comment down below and just tell us what you guys thought. And while you're down there, press that subscribe button. Hope to see you guys next week. Peace.